Welcome back in. Today we're going to be discussing my favorite topic of the season. And yep, that's right. Must draft kickers for 2024. But before we get into the goodness, first things first, I want to start off with the three things you really should be looking at in terms of kickers. The first one is Vegas implied team totals. Obviously, we want kickers from very good offenses, teams that are going to score a lot of points. Because honestly, one of the most underrated aspects of your kicker isn't just kickers that can kick long field goals. It's also kickers that are going to get a lot of extra points because that can supplement you on a week to week basis for who your kickers are. So we're looking for high implied team totals on a week to week basis. If you're streaming kickers, all you got to do is go to Google, type in NFL implied team totals for that week. We use this a lot for DFS and other things like that, but it's also useful for kickers because that's all we're looking for is kickers that have a chance to score a lot of points for that week. So that is number one. Number two and number three are we're looking for kickers that are on high pass volume, high pace of play offenses, and third down efficiency, right? Because obviously, if a team is converting third downs a lot, they're going to have more and more opportunities to be able to get inside that opportunity, to be able to give that kicker a chance to be able to kick a field goal or even get an extra point. And like I said, extra points are absolutely important when it comes to your kicker. But one thing to keep in mind: never, and I mean never, select a kicker before the last two rounds of your draft. Just wait till the last two rounds and draft your kicker. You don't need to be drafting a kicker around 10 or 11. And here's why. I know I hear it every year that I've done this. This is the third year I've done it. And people try to say, well, you have Justin Tucker. He's so consistent, and which why he is. And we'll talk about him here in a second. Only 14 points separated the kicker 2 last year, which was Justin Tucker, to the kicker 12. For context, 160 points separated CMC and James Cook, who was the RB12 last year. There's just not a big enough positional edge to be able to sit here and say that you should draft a kicker really early. You get no edge unless you're in a league with some very unique scoring, and then maybe we can have a different conversation. But in your typical fantasy league, it makes no sense to do this. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into the good stuff. Let's get into the top 12 kickers, and then we'll get into some of my must draft guys. First things first, I got Brandon Aubrey. He was the only kicker last year to average double-digit fantasy points with 10.6. He also converted a league-high 10 field goals of 50-plus yards, while he also converted 94.7 of his kicks, which was the third highest rate among all kickers last year. Aubrey's an easy pick, considering their Cowboys offense ranked inside the top 4 in passing yards and third down conversion. This offense is going to be very similar to what was last year. They didn't really make any changes. Brought Zeke back, but that was pretty much it. So this offense is going to be very much similar to what was last year. I don't expect really much of a drop off. And Brandon Aubrey proved to be that dude last year. Next up, everybody's favorite, Justin Tucker, the 6-time Pro Bowler, holds the NFL record for field goal percentage, and he's never finished outside of the top 10 in fantasy scoring since entering the league in 2012. After converting 9 of 14 field goals, though, and 50-plus yards in 2022, he only made one kick last year from that range, though he still finishes the kicker 2 last season behind Brandon Aubrey. Number 3 for me is Harrison Butker. After a down 2022, Butker bounced back and finishes the kicker 7 last year, kicker 10 in fantasy points per game with 9.1. Between 2017 and 2023, Butker ranked second in fantasy points and fourth in field goal attempts with a 90.1 conversion rate. Listen, we know this offense is going to be a lot better now that they've added Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy to this offense. So I think this offense takes another big step forward this year, well more explosive than it was last year. Next up is Jake Elliott. While he is inconsistent as a fantasy kicker year to year, he did bounce back last year. After finishing the kicker 21 in 2022, he averaged 7.6 fantasy points per game in 2022, but finishes the kicker 6 in 2023, converting 93% of his kicks and hitting 750-plus yards, which was tied for the 5th highest rate in the league. Next up is Kaimi Fairbairn. Now, Fairbairn missed 5 games last season, which caused him to finish the kicker 26 overall. However, he was the kicker 4 in overall in fantasy points per game with 9.6. The Texans also rewarded him this offseason with a 3-year, $15 million deal. Fairbairn was money from last year, converting 96% of his field goals. Houston's offense figures to be at least on par with where it was last season with the acquisition of Stephon Diggs over the offseason. Last season, the Texans were 5th in pass yards, but 20th in third down conversion rates. So they actually can improve in that department. But Kaimi Fairbairn, I think, is somebody that we could definitely be looking to draft. He is my kicker 5. Next up here is Young Wei Koo. Koo has had a bit of a down year in 2023, finishes the kicker 15. Things look much brighter in 2023 with Zach Robinson taking over as the offensive coordinator. Koo has also struggled at times last season, only converting 86% of his field goals. But now with Zach Robinson as the offensive coordinator, no Arthur Smith. Obviously, Kirk Cousins was a big acquisition. They finally have a quarterback, also drafted Michael Penix. I think this offense finally takes off this year with Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts. So Young Ku is one of the better kickers you can draft. Next up is Evan McPherson. McPherson struggled in 2023, only converting 83% of his field goals. What helps him was kicking the ninth most extra points, which is always going to be a boost to any kicker. He's also been one of the best kickers for 50 plus yards as he's banged through 21 of them since 2021. As long as Joe Burrow can stay healthy this year, McPherson should be able to bounce back and be a reliable kicker one on a week to week basis for fantasy football. After that, we have Tyler Bass. Typically, Tyler Bass is ranked a bit higher, but we do have some concerns with this offense in 2024. The Bills lost key pieces of wide receivers, but I don't think we are in store for a massive regression. He's been one of the more reliable place kickers since turning pro in 2020. Bass ranks fourth in fantasy points among kickers with an 85.6% conversion rate on field goals. So next up after that, we have Greg Zuerlein, Matt Gay, Jason Sanders. Sanders kicked it as the kicker 12 last year, despite only having 28 chances, which is one of the lowest rates in the league. What helped him was his 59 PATs. Sanders makes for one of the safer bets with the Dolphins kicker in 2024. And then following that, you have Jake Moody. Now, I want to get to the three guys that I really want to draft. Now, a couple of these guys are actually on this list. That's why I didn't really go into them. But first off, for me, is Greg Zuerlein. I was actually surprised looking at early ADPs being drafted at kicker 18. And that does make a lot of sense. Despite playing in one of the most anemic offenses 2023, Greg the Leg still finished as the kicker 13, averaging 8.9 fantasy points per game. He did this by only kicking a measly 16 PATs last year. What helps him were the league leading 13 field goals from 40 to 49 yards and another five from 50 plus yards. With Aaron Rodgers returning, Zuerlein could easily finish the top five fantasy kicker in 2024 as long as this offense goes the way we think it's going to go with Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall. So I think Greg Zuerlein is an absolute steal at kicker 18. He makes somebody that this is a perfect example of just waiting till the last pick of your draft to be able to take someone like Greg Zuerlein. Next up is Matt Gay, the kicker 20. I also don't understand his ADP. Another kicker who gets the benefit of kicking indoors for at least 8 of his games. It also helps that he finished as a top 5 kicker in 2023, despite only converting 80% of his field goals. He finished with 9.2 fantasy points per game and converted 15 field goals from 40 and 50 plus yards. The Colts offense also figures to be more explosive in 2024 with a healthy Anthony Richardson. So here's another one. How about a little sleeper option for you for people if somebody were to snipe you and take Greg Zuerlein and Matt Gay? And that is Cam Little. That is who is going undrafted right now, but Riley Patterson was just released by the Jacksonville Jaguars, meaning Cam Little is likely going to be the opening day kicker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I don't blame you. You probably have no idea who Cam Little is unless you're a Jaguars fan. The Jaguars, though, selected Cam Little in the sixth round of 2024 draft. Little actually played at Arkansas last year, and he has quite the resume. He has been the most accurate kicker in program history, converting 83% of his field goals and never missed an extra point. He certainly has the leg to make the long field goals after he made 7 50-plus yard field goals, which is the second all time in the SEC. This is a good spot as the Jaguars, despite their offensive issues last year, ranked 8th in passing yards and 17th in third down conversion rate. Jaguars offense looks a little different this year, though, with Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones departing. Though they drafted Brian Thomas in the first round, as well as signing Gabe Davis. So I think Cam Little is kind of this sneaky under the radar type of ad here, whether that's somebody you want to stream or whether that's somebody you want to draft to see how he does this year. But Cam Little is definitely somebody I think another kicker that you can be taking a look at here in the later rounds of your fantasy draft. So those are the three must draft kickers for me. I know some people are going to be like, where's Daniel Carlson? I don't hate Daniel Carlson. Since 2020, Carlson has led all NFL kickers with in field goal attempts and fantasy points, all while ranking third in field goal percentage among kickers with at least 20 attempts. But I just don't necessarily love this offense this year. I think it's going to be a very low volume, run heavy offense. We'll have to see how they do, but I don't think they're going to check the box in terms of pace of play. I don't think they're definitely going to check the boxes in terms of passing yards. And so it just makes it I'm not as excited to draft Daniel Carlson. I think people will overdraft him because of his past performances. I just don't necessarily love him this year as an option. I do think a few other options you could take a look at here for me would be a guy like Blake Grupe. He just missed my top 12. I have him at 13. Cairo Santos was also a top 5 kicker last year for the Chicago Bears, and that was actually in a pretty bad offense. But though he ran pretty hot last year, nailing 9 field goals of 50-plus yards, that's not something he's really done in his career. But so Cairo Santos just misses the cut for me as well as Dustin Hopkins is also a pretty good option. Finishes a top 12 kicker last year. I think he's another player that you could definitely take a look at. Let me know in the comment section below what you think I got right, what you think I got wrong, how much of an idiot I am. If you haven't already, if you like this video, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.